Hey everybody. Outside of beer, traveling is arguably my favorite hobby. It's what we do to create unique family memories. It's what I do when I need to disconnect from technology, like right now. It's what I crave when I want to discover new experiences. And it's doubly as exciting when I get to pair my love for travel with professional development. Today, we're going to talk about how you can grow your industry network and invest in your own craft beer education through beer travel. And I'm joined by Trip of Trips Beer Trips. Trips, how's everything going today?
Everything's going great, Andrew. Glad to be here.
So, before we dive into all the cool things you're doing in the world of beer, when was your last vacation or trip? Personal,
Well,
business, where did you go last?
I always like to tell people I think I'm living every college sophomore's dream. I am paid to travel and to drink beer. So just recently, I was at the Brow, which is I'd say the European CBC, and before that, I took a group to Oktoberfest in Munich, and then I had a bunch of other trips. In 2023 that were great, and 2024 is already shaping up to be an even more vibrant year than last year. We're still coming out of COVID, and I think people are antsy to get back to doing things they like to do.
100%. So, when did travel first become an important part of your life?
Well, growing up as a kid, my mom and dad took. I lived in Sacramento. We basically every Christmas, Easter, summer vacation, we went traveling, and by the time I was 18, I had visited virtually every national park on the West Coast and west of the Mississippi. And then through high school, I was working with a buddy of mine's dad who owned a beer distributorship. And I was able to kind of get on there and then work with some beer suppliers. And the company I worked for had a lot of imports. So I was also afforded the opportunity to visit those breweries in the different countries. And that kind of pretty much spawned it. And then after that, I said, hey, this is great. Getting paid. I'm in the beer business and I can travel and see a lot of cool new places and drink beer and a lot of different beers too.
How much do you believe your name influenced your path in life?
Probably quite a bit. Not really. The Reader's Digest version is my for real's name is Martin, and my dad's name was Martin, and my grandpa's dad name was Martin. So since I was a third of the triple Martin, I was always Trip. Actually, I had Trip on my driver's license and passport until 9/11. Um, and the only other time I was not Trip is I went to a Catholic high school. So all my high school buddies know me as Marty, but everybody else knows me as Trip. But yes, it's kind of a one of those cool spontaneous things that it's like a guy whose last name is Bone Break and he's a bone surgeon or something like that. So yeah, being Trips, beer trips. Of course, a lot of people think I'm in the cannabis industry too, but I'm not.
Any future plans for that?
Well, I'm not a partaker, but I also think that, like anything else, you can't ignore it, and it's becoming more and more integrated into um, every level of consumption, whether it's eating or drinking or smoking. So you got to find out about it, and you got to experience it. And I think the key, and again, we'll talk about this in a little bit, but the key to anything nowadays, Andrews, I think, especially nowadays, you've got to have face-to-face interaction with people and experiences. I just read an article this morning, I think it was on CNN, about how people are becoming less and less social, and because of COVID, they had to stay in their house, and they kind of got used to that. And things like restaurants used to not even start serving people to 7 or 8 o'clock are now filling up at 5 and 5:30, and it's just people are drinking less, people are physically doing less, and I think this is not a good sign, especially if you want to keep on the forefront of keeping yourself in the loop on things beyond relying on social media.
And when we first really started taking crappy professionals to the next level, I would say it was during the pandemic. We had an audience, there was a lot of opportunity there,
Right.
and it's really great the things we can do on a screen like we are right now. I mean, it's great to connect, learn from you, but there's something very special about being in the same room as someone, the same bar as someone, sharing a pint together. It truly allows you to take the relationship to the next level and build even deeper connections.
So I wholeheartedly agree with that. So somebody asked me what time, what is my business all about, and I said really what it is. it's about bringing professional people together with an agenda. So, and I call the other one, say, more retail or consumer based, 50 people on the bus, 50 people off the bus. I think that if you have the opportunity to have a small group, I'm talking like 6 to 10 people, where you're, pulling some beer off the pigtail in the cellar versus getting a 3-ounce sample, in the tasting room, where you're talking with the brewer, where you're talking with the marketing people, and having an agenda and saying, hey, what's working for you and what are your challenges? I'll tell you what's working for me, what my challenges are. And again, I love this whole thing that we're doing now, Andrew, but it's not the same unless you're really physically at their place. You can go to the CBC, you can go to GABF and that kind of thing, and that's great, but that's scratching the surface. One needs to really, hunker down and get in there and experience it.
So you alluded to your early career that really was combining beer and the opportunity to travel quite a bit. At what point did you decide to launch your own business that really just focused on that?
So it's interesting. In about 2008, I had been working for a large craft brewery that got bought out by AB, and therefore I became a consultant. And a lot of beer distributors were trying to figure out, this is when the shift was coming over from micro beers to craft beers. And a lot of beer distributors just weren't getting it. They were kind of, one size fits all. It's the same template, just changed the words in the middle, and there wasn't really any deep dive in there. So guys were going to, these distributors were going to GABF and CBC, but they just weren't connecting with people. So I was approached by, as a consultant to bring people on a more deeper dive thing. And so we would go to, for instance, Colorado, but we'd spend a week in Colorado. We would be hitting New Belgium, Model, but we go down to, Great Divide, Verbatim, so we had the opportunity to experience large craft brewers, medium craft brewers, nano breweries, small craft brewers, and then the interaction between these guys is that they were, I'll just say the Bud distributor from North Carolina, and they left as Mike, Steve, and Bill, family-owned organization, and it really resonated both with the distributors and with the craft brewers that were now putting these now people versus labels and badges and things like that. And I've did that since 2008, 2009. And then some of the craft brewers are saying, hey, this is pretty cool. Maybe we can share ideas as well. So I just kind of really dropped some of the other stuff that I was doing and really focused in on this, professional travel. My program is really very different in that I'm not just drinking beer. I'm experiencing the location. I'm experiencing the brewer. We're talking to the people that makes them versus how many pints can I squeeze in a afternoon of bicycling or a brew bus or something like that.
Hey, that's
and it's
fun
paid off
too. But I love to kind of hear about what you classify as like the different levels of beer travel. We've got the recreation travel that I'm going to do on my own when I'm with my family. But talk to me for a minute, Trip, about the different levels of beer travel, or maybe even wine and bourbon travel.
So the basic thing, I think, is I'll just call it the brew bus. Where you spend an afternoon, you show up at a craft brewery, you get people on the bus, and then they bounce around town, hitting 4 or 5 and having a pint at each, and so on. And that's just that's, to me, that's the 30,000 foot level. And then you have I call recreational beer travel, and this would be like the bicycle tours in Belgium, or something like that in the United States, where you're doing some physical activity, but you're also experiencing the location that you're at beyond the beer, and then of course you're enjoying that as well. And then I like to call what I focus in on is really more of and we'll call the other stuff retail. I'll call my stuff more wholesale / professional. So the type of people that I'm engaging that are participating in the beer travel that I offer are professionals, whether they're craft brewers, whether they're distributors, whether they're actually home brewers. Julia Hers, talked to me a while back saying, hey, Trip, virtually every craft brewer started out as a home brewer, get them young and offer that. So really it's about people that respect beer and want to know much more beyond than just drinking. I'm not putting the other stuff off and saying it's bad. I'm just saying that there's different levels, and with that, you get a deeper experience. And then one of the other things I think that's important for people to do is not just a matter of getting on a road trip and bouncing into a brewery every single day, but also maybe experiencing some of the other things that are unique to that area. Um, for instance, I mean, we got groups going up to Alaska this in May. There's an opportunity to take a helicopter, up to the Mendenhall Glacier. So, I mean, that's not something that you would normally do. If you're on a cruise ship, you probably don't even have a chance to do that. But also, too, I mean, a lot of times the breweries that we're hanging out with, they're going with us. So that I think makes it, it gives you a much rounder, fuller effect of what you're learning and engaging in, and you're having that great experience as well.
It sounds so immersive. So I'd love to talk for a minute, about the current state of the industry. You have
Yep.
alluded to that as well. Like right now, Trip, what do you think is most important for brewers and owners?
So as much fun as the beer trips I'm talking about are and educational, I think really truly the brewers today have to double down on education, continuing education, new education. I know it's tough. A lot of breweries every single day now you're reading about, some pretty iconic and strong local and regional beer breweries having difficulties. But I think that the consumer today is much more educated, and you can't afford to put out less than fantastic product. And the way you do that, I think you've got to reinvest in your people. You've got to reinvest in your equipment, and you've just got to, learn learn that stuff. And you've also got to expand your education. It's not just brewing anymore. You've got to look into. I know a lot of craft brewers are getting into craft spirits. Okay, it's not just a matter of going over there and getting a still. You've got to know what you're doing. You've got to learn this stuff. Um, you know, uh, to me, I think that's the most important thing is decide, are you going to be prepared to handle the opportunities today and in the future? And that's going to mean whether you like it or not. It's a blurring of the lines. You're going to be producing a lot of things. Are you going to start producing meat? Are you going to start producing kombucha? Are you where it's legal? Are you going to be introducing cannabis to your various lines of products? So it's I remember in the olden days, you had beer distributors, you had wine distributors, and you had spirits distributors. Those days were all gone. Everything is blurred now. You've got hard soda, you've got seltzers, you've got hard, juices and things. I'm not saying that one needs to try to, chase each shiny object, but I think you've got to realize that if you're a one-trick pony, then you're probably not going to be successful as you would be as if you are prepared to have a variety and have some diversity in your portfolio, and make it good. So that to me is the most important thing.
So you talk a lot about experience. So how can brewers continue their education through these kind of experiences?
So there's the traditional way. There's some great beer educational institutions, universities, Auburn, Davis, a lot of these other places in the United States, Siebold Institute. Um, I'm involved with Weinstefan in Germany, it's the oldest brewery in the world. They kind of had an aha moment in 2023 where they realized that all of their classes were taught in German. And unless you're speaking, technical German, you're going to be kind of out of the loop there. So they have now started offering a variety of classes in English, and I think that that's the type of thing that you can, especially if you're going someplace, you want to experience something a little different. You can go to these places now where before you couldn't because they weren't only offered in the local language. So I think that that's really kind of a cool thing. I will tell you, Andrew, that the one area that I'm pretty weak in is wine. So outside of going to some tasting rooms myself as a consumer, I'm really focused in on beer. And in the last year and a half, because there is a lot of craft brewers delving into craft spirits, whether it be to participate in the canned cocktail program, if they're going to make spirit-based cocktails or malt-based pot cocktails or just their own spirit line. I've there's been some trips that I've developed specifically in Kentucky. And I've had some brewers actually ask me to put together for, I don't think I can do it in 2024, but 2025, a Scottish Scotch tour. And there is a new vibrant culture of Scottish gin that's emerging. So I can imagine a double whammy of English gin, and Scotch trip sometime in 2025 or 2026. But yeah, all this stuff to me is it's much different than, again, you can probably do it yourself, but it's really, I think what Beer Trips brings to the professional is you're meeting the people that you want to meet, whether it be the owner, the brewer, the marketing people, things like that. And regardless, I think that should be something that every brewer should maybe have on their checklist by themselves. Yes, when you go to CBC this year, make a point of these particular brewers that maybe you want to interact with, that maybe you just know them by reputation, but pick up the phone. I mean, in the old days, that's what brewers did all the time, is they just picked up the phone. Hey, you want to collaborate? And that's, everything's hunky dory. Well, things have gotten a little tighter now, but I'm still not dissuading people from, taking things in their own hand and, walking up to somebody, shake their hand and say, hey, let's get together sometime and have a pint. And you mind if I come by sometime? And I think that's been pretty effective. That's how I started.
I mean, we all know brewers wear so many different hats. Owners, managers, brewers, they're doing a billion things at once. And they have to be really intentional to do the things you're talking about, engaging in professional development, networking with others just like them who can teach them, or just simply be there for connection. How do you recommend brewers approach this? Like, how can they be that intentional and dedicate the time?
Well, I think there's a couple of ways. One, if you're going to do it yourself, is make a list of people that you think you'd like to meet, where they're located, and then after you've done that, if there's two or three in the same location, just pick up the phone or send an email. Be respectful and say, "Hey, I'm Joe Blow I'm Trip from Trips Brewing Company in Maryland, and I've got some challenges here, and I'd like to come to name the state." And along with you and two or three other brewers, I'd like to see if we can't get together and set up some time. If I were to plan some things into sometime in the late summer or whenever the time would be. And I think you'd be surprised at the number of people that'll be, yeah, that's pretty good. A lot of people don't do things because they talk themselves out of it before, they have a great idea, but they don't take it to the next level. Now, that being said, you just can't be willy-nilly and just kind of shotgun it out there. That's what I'm saying, is that you need to kind of put the list of brewers down there. Also look at the beers that they're producing and what else they're doing. And is this something that you think you want to do? And if you do, then how that can, how those guys can help you. And conversely, maybe you've got some things that are successful for you that maybe they might be challenged with. A lot of it really is Andrew is picking up the phone, or when you're at CBC or GABF, walking up and saying, hey, or set up a chance to meet them there. And then and to establish that connection to go deeper later on when you have a chance to get out there, have them come out to see you.
And Trip, you've organized these professional beer trips for quite some time now. How would you describe the brewers that are getting engaged with the programs that you're offering? What are some of the characteristics that they share?
So interesting. This last year, I was approached by a pretty large Midwestern brewery that said, quote, I know just about everything there is to know about IPAs, but I don't know squat about traditional Bavarian Helles, lagers, and pilsners. And they had a list of people that they wanted to see in Germany and they wanted to experience, but they didn't know them. And just happened to be, I happen to know all these people, and was just lucked out. And so we put together a custom trip, and they got absolutely everything they wanted out of that. I mean, even to the point of where they wanted to source their traditional beer ingredients from a grower, a particular grower. We went to a couple of growers and they hit it off. I just, I'm a facilitator. I don't know, whatever they do afterwards, that's between them. And same thing with they got some malting ideas. We went to Schrenkela and they got to see Matthias and their recently retired brewmaster. And I mean, they loved it. It was great. But also on top of that, they took a couple of their internal people as kind of a reward because they had kind of turned the corner from 2022 to 2023, and they said, we should bring some other people along with this. So we had about 9 people total, and it was great. It was brewers, it was owners, it was taproom people, it was HR, and it was, to me, I still get comments back from the saying it was a great power pack. They said it was all steak and no parsley. and and of course we had plenty of beers in between here. So that to me is what again, just something that had to be I facilitate, but one can do that yourself. It's just that I think you've got to really know what you want and what your goal is. They specifically knew what they were looking for. So anything that had to do with fruit beers, they weren't interested. If it was, sour beers, they weren't interested. They were laser focused on exactly what they wanted. They knew who they wanted to meet, even though they didn't know them, and they're very happy and really got a lot out of that as well. I think that's important.
I think one of the things you're downplaying is the personal relationships that you've built, because anyone can try to call up anybody, but it doesn't mean they're going to take the call. You've been doing this for so long that you've got to know the people all across the world involved in the beer industry, and they've become your go-to experts when you go to certain cities, and they've opened the doors for you to bring in brewers from the States to share their tap room, to share their brew house. How have you built these relationships? Because I'm fascinated by that. And you mentioned yourself as like a connector. So, these brewers, these companies, they've welcomed you with open arms.
Right. And it's, again, it's sometimes better be lucky than good. In 2010, I was talking to a lot of craft brewers, and they were saying every year they were going to Yakima, for the hop harvest, and especially the Northwestern brewers were getting ready for their wet hop releases, and how special that was. And I said, I don't hear anybody going to Germany and doing this stuff. They're all, of course, this is now IPAs are starting to take off, and traditionally the German hops really are, bred for American style IPAs. So I mean, I speak kitchen German, so I can get get more beers into the bathroom. That's really all the stuff you need to know just about anywhere. And I went to the Hallertau, and I went, literally knocked on the door and explained to them who I was and what I was proposing to do. And it's interesting, Andrew, a lot of times people have the same needs that they just don't know how to express to have that thing taken care of. They were trying to have a link to get to the United States. How can they, explain? Yes, they can get it through BSG and Country Malt Vintners and things like that. But I mean, they really wanted to get the brewers to come over there, and so they basically lined me up with the three hop growing regions there, all the managing directors there, and I've got we're in the fields. We have a relationship in the Bavarian Hop Research Center in Hull. It's we're the people that are leaders of the institute are walking us through that research center, showing us the how they're trying to reduce use of chemicals and to keep downy mildew and the different things under control without spraying. And these are the lead scientists that are there. So, and they appreciate the fact that the people that I brought are brewers and also respect that stuff. That's interesting to them, So versus maybe I call it the retail guy saying, well, when's our next beer stop? But yeah, so what I have really been fortunate, and again, because I've been doing this since 2008, 2009, is although I've never led a trip to South America or Japan or New Zealand, Australia, the people that I know in Germany have relationships with those people. So I could very easily put together something like that. So really, it's kind of a positive domino effect. It's just a matter of somebody saying, hey, this is what I'm interested in. I'd like to go to the Nelson Hop Fields in New Zealand. Have I ever been there? No, but I know the guys who know the guys, and yes, you can definitely have that sort of thing happen. But really, it's just about being approachable, respecting it, respecting the the industry and respecting the people that are getting their hands dirty. I mean, whether it be the brewer at the at Adveinstefan or Augustiner, or if it's the farmer, out in the field, or the maltster, barley fields and things like that. It's kind of neat. You're getting I call it a vertical integration. You're touching at every single level, but you're not just touching. I mean, you're in there.
It sounds so simple, but the amount of time you've dedicated to building these relationships is impressive. But when you think about it, all these people you're interacting with, they're so passionate about what they're doing. It's so contagious, and they love answering questions and engaging with others just like them.
So it's interesting. When I first started going to the Hallertau in Bavaria, I said, why don't you guys promote yourselves during the hop harvest like Bordeaux and Napa and the Willamette Valley does for the crush? And they looked at me like, why? Why would we do that? I mean, it's just something you would think would. And by the way, it's gorgeous over there. Of course, it's the best weather. Everything is, Germany is like a real world Disneyland sometimes, but just it never dawned on them. I mean, they're so focused in on doing what they're doing, it never really dawned on them. So, although again, that's more of a retail thing, I still think there's a great opportunity. If everybody's always looking for that next untapped spot, I think that Germany in the three hop growing regions during hop harvest, it would be a fantastic thing. The biggest difference I realized though is that in during the crush, all the wineries have tasting rooms. The guys who are harvesting their hops, they don't have a taste. There's a couple farm breweries, but they really just take it. They process, they bale them and then they take them over to San Johan for later on. They'll be pelletized and so on. So it's not really an opportunity. They're not really set up to have, say, consumers come by and taste their wares. Where the wine, they can do that.
So speaking of consumers, I know, these trips are great for the professionals, but what other opportunities do you see that can help brewers and tap rooms?
So one of the things I think that really is challenging for brewers and tap rooms is retaining their customers. And they're doing it by the tried and true message that just kind of tend to get stale after a while, like trivia nights and football games and things like that. I think that a lot of bars will do like I live in Baltimore area. They'll have the O's are playing Philly, or go up to Boston or something like that. Some bars will organize trips to go up for a weekend, and then they'll do a series with the O's up in Philly or the O's up in the Red Sox. I know there's a million Red Sox fans that come down to Memorial Stadium whenever they come down here. But I think that could be something where a brewery and a tap room can offer their clients something that's kind of cool and unique that can become an annual or even a biannual event. And they can do it anything from where they're organizing it and having their customers buy into it. And again, if they needed some assistance, I could help them make it a little bit more than just a brew bus. Or they can offer some programs like, if for instance, if you make like 20 different beers and if you drink, try 10 or more, you would get a discount on a trip, or if you spend X number of dollars, you get a discount on a trip. But the key is that, and again, I see a lot of breweries shifting, not necessarily away from IPAs, but really kind of delving deeper into traditional Helles, lagers, and pilsners. Which, by the way, when you make a mistake with those things, there's not a lot of wiggle room. You can't hide. IPAs just put more hops in, but that truly is craft. That maybe you could center your potential consumer trips, which you are involved with, to maybe places that feature those types of beers, whether it be in Germany or in the United States. It's just kind of a cool deal. I also see that as a way of engaging your other brewing compadres. Is that if you were to go and say take a group of 10 people to say southeastern Pennsylvania, which include like a Yingling or a Trogs or yards and things like that. Hey, quid pro quo, maybe those guys can work on something and come over to your neck of the woods and do it. So it's just you're kind of showing your support to each other, but also I think you're giving something that is kind of unique and personal to your customers where they can engage in what you're doing. If you're saying, hey, we're now releasing some new, traditional Czech pills or Bavarian helices and things, this is how we're tying into. So consume our products, drink more of our stuff, and maybe you can have a chance to not say win, but just to go on one of these trips that we're organized because it all ties in.
And I know brewers always say it's going to be the year of the lager, but part of that process to get to that year that we so crave so much is educating the consumer, because the more educated the consumer is, the more they're going to want to try these more traditional styles you're bringing back that you're producing at a really high quality. You would agree to that?
Absolutely. I think that's the that's the key. That light beer is not light. It is not dark. And I think that when you get a really good Helles, the mouthfeel of a really good Helles is absolutely unique. There is flavor. There's a lot of stuff going on there. A really well done pills. I mean, you've got the right crispness and the hoppiness there. That is, and these guys that went to that I took over to Bavaria that wanted to learn about Helleses and Pilsners realized that I can charge just as much for a pint of Helleses as I can for IPAs, and it could be a lot less expensive. Plus, they're drinking 3 or 4 versus 1 or 2. And if I've got them in the seat, I want to keep them in the seat, and I want that seat active. So that was kind of again, they came to me, they told me that was their aha moment that. If they're going to only get so many people in the bar, they obviously want safe consumption, but they also want to have some activity as well. I want that tap handle being pulled.
I love how we're talking about worldwide beer travel today, but you brought it back to the tap room and making the consumers spend more money while their butts in that seat. It's so relevant.
Yep. And again, I think you can, if you get involved with these ideas of having your tap room be a catalyst for maybe even a series of trips. You could have said, well, we're having a domestic offering, or we're having an international offering, or we're having an East Coast, whatever it is there. So it doesn't have to all be one thing and all the same. And I think that if the word gets out that maybe there might be other people that might want to come to your place to engage, and especially if you're introducing or you're featuring the beers of the places that you're proposing to go to. Maybe you want to go to the Pacific Northwest and you've got all these new IPAs, or you want to go up to New England and how you're taking this variation of New England IPAs to a different level. Maybe you want to go to Colorado and see what the weed situation is going on. I don't know. But, I think that there's a lot of opportunities there that you can do to bang up your business and be something refreshing for your consumers to do. Because I know that if you recall, it's 2022 and 2023, there's a lot of people doing revenge travel. They're just going for the sake of going, and things have kind of calmed down a little bit. Now I think we can have purposeful travel, and whether it be to promote your business or for education. I think that's the key for looking to the future. And again, I want to go back to the education thing. Is really spirits might be, especially if you can have the opportunity to get into some bourbon, deep dive bourbon experiences, or even something over in the UK. That is unique.
And I do love the concept. I'm going to probably refer to it by the wrong term, but this hybrid travel where you're combining the brewery with the consumer to form that deeper connection. Because we all work in the industry. We're talking to brewers, owners, managers, decision makers all the time. But the guest who's coming to your tap room still feels special when the owner or brewer gives them the time of day just to ask them questions.
Right. That's the Cheers syndrome. I mean, they come there because Sam's there, and I think that the more if you're an owner and you're a brewer and you can't be as engaged as you'd like to be with your customers, I think you can still be that face of a group that you could be in charge of leading to have them experience what you're going to experience, or you're going to maybe teach them about, and saying this is why we've pivoted towards a Helles or a lager, or why we pivoted to Weiss beers, whatever the thing is. But then that makes it relevant. So, it's not just going to Germany. It's not just going to Oregon or Washington. You have a specific purpose that this is why we're doing this, because these are the beers that we're featuring now. So you're engaging with your customer.
Love it. So you plan lots of amazing beer trips. What's on the books for 2024? Get me excited.
Okay, so I'm leaving in 2 weeks to go to Fasching. And Fasching is a southern German version of Mardi Gras. So in Munich, it's Fasching. In Cologne, where they make the Kolsch's, is Carnival with a K. In Rio de Janeiro, it's Carnival. And of course, in New Orleans, it's Mardi Gras. And this is the beginning of Lent. And then I'm going back again in March for Stark Beer Fest. And that is Strong Beer Fest. And this is when the monks decided they're done drinking weak beer and get back into it in a heavy way. Following that, I've got 2 bourbon trips, one in the spring and one in the fall. And the reason I do these in the spring and fall is, again, that special little activity. There's a racetrack outside of Lexington called Keeneland. And Keeneland is the kind of the warm-up, the AAA for the Kentucky Derby. It's a lot more intimate. So we spend the day at the races there. So in addition to sipping bourbons during the week, we get to play the ponies as well. So again, that's the kind of interaction stuff. I've got a group heading up to Alaska, and then the big one is the Bavarian Hop Harvest, and that one unfortunately ends not right before Oktoberfest. There's about a week and a half before that. Last year's Hop Harvest literally ended 2 days before Oktoberfest, so you could literally roll one right into the other. And then I've got a couple of I call them customized beer trips that are scheduled that are still coming together. But I think that I'm listening to exactly what they want, and then therefore I come back and I give them some ideas, and then they say yes or they say no or what about this, and then we put it together. For 2025, I'm looking to go to Belgium and to really kind of maybe have a hybrid bicycling and monastery tour. Maybe a little bit of history in there too, because that's if you're a World War II junkie or World War I junkie, we've got a couple little stops there. But yeah, and then I just really, like I said, I don't have anything scheduled on the books right now for New Zealand or Japan or England yet, but I have the people. I've had people approach me saying, I can get you those guys. If you need to go, I can get you hooked up. So, yeah, a lot of stuff on there. Of course, we're going to be at CVC, GABF, and all that kind of good stuff there, too.
You mentioned all these wonderful cities. Few I've been to, all I want to go to. I've been to a lot of states here in the United States. I have yet to go to Alaska. Tell me a story from one of your beer adventures, one of your beer trips to the great state of Alaska. So
one story is, and again, this is how intimate. Again, I can't promise it every single time, but it's intimate. The sales director for Alaskan Brewing Company joined our group, and we started in Juneau. And then we had a VIP tour of the brewery there. We had dinner that night, but the next day we went to had a helicopter ride to the Mendenhall Glacier, which is pretty dang cool, especially when that glacier might not be there much longer. Then we went to Anchorage, and then we have a 350-mile trip from Anchorage up to Fairbanks, and this sales director joined us the whole way. We hit all the iconic Alaskan breweries. And I think it's interesting about Alaska. I was just up there again this last year, and I'm going up again this year. They're not crying the blues. It's interesting. The state's losing population, but their craft brewing industry is pretty vibrant. So, whether it be 49th State or we're going to Anchorage, they've got some really cool stuff there. We're driving up. We stop at Denali Brewing Company just outside of Talkeetna, spend a day. Again, there's another little experiential thing, a day at Denali Park. And then we end up in Fairbanks. And John was nice enough to have us over to his house, his own personal house, and we had Alaskan king crab legs. It was probably one of the most gluttonous meals I've ever had in my whole wide life. But yeah, there's 8 of us drinking beer and eating king crab legs and kind of going to all the spots that we wanted to go to. And then the next day before we left, we used to fly out at midnight. John, is we got to go out to the rifle range and we got to shoot off some some rifles and stuff like that at the rifle range, not at any kind of things like that. So it's that kind of personal stuff that, again, I can't guarantee that that's something that he just volunteered, but you wanted a particular story. That was the story. I mean, it was just, that's how engaging these guys are. And the reason that he did that, he told me afterwards, the reason he did that is because the people I'm bringing up to him are people that he wants to meet. He gets benefit out of that as well, whether it be distributors or interacting with other. In this particular trip, it was a couple of brewers and it was a distributor. And it was a distributor he was considering, should I go with or not go with? And the breweries, he knew them and it was just great. So that's the key thing right there, Andrew, I think is that the reason I'm lucky to get as close to these brewers and these suppliers as I am is because they receive something out of it as well. It's not just they're giving us and we give to them as well. And I think that's the key difference.
No, I love that. That's a great story about your time in Alaska. How about a little one with your European travel? I'd love to hear, maybe make this story something that, you obviously have these trips really planned out.
Mm-hmm.
Has there ever been a time something didn't go quite as planned, but it ended up okay? And take that however you would like.
All right. I will tell you, though, so this is about 2013. We are in Tettnang. Tettnang is the southernmost hop growing region. It's also on Lake Constance. And it's Sunday. And I realized that nothing in Germany is open on Sunday. I mean, it's, Catholic country. So I realized that there's a ferry that goes over from Friedrichshafen to Ramshorn. It's the lake then connects with Switzerland. It's about a 10-mile ferry ride. So I get the van, we get on the ferry, we have a rattler, on the ferry. We get to Switzerland and we find a pub there in the morning, and we have a little, kind of a little bracer in Switzerland. And then somebody said, I've never been to Liechtenstein. I said, well, I've never been to Liechtenstein either, but Liechtenstein's right in the neighborhood there. So we drove due east for about an hour, and we had a beer at Liechtenstein. And then as we're heading back to Germany, we got to go through Austria. And we stopped and had a beer in Austria. And coincidentally, my last name is Closer, and that's where there's a little town called Hard, H-A-R-D, and that's where the Closers come from. It's like Smith in the graveyard. And so we had a beer there, saw the graveyard. And then we ended up going back to Friedrichshafen. And Friedrichshafen is also the airfield where the Zeppelins were produced.
Cool.
The Hindenburg and all that stuff is still there. They have commercial Zeppelins now, rides. So I said, hey, let's go on a Zeppelin ride. So we went on a Zeppelin, we had a beer. And I realized on a day where there was nothing open and nothing to do, we had about the most perfect beer day you could possibly have, because we had 4 beers in 4 countries, on the water, in the air, and on the land. So we made something out of a whole bunch of nothing.
4 beers, 4 countries,
mm-hmm.
in the air, and on the land.
And water. Remember, we took the ferry.
And water. I thought I caught what? Wow. And that was all fairly unplanned. At least you're claiming it was unplanned.
No, it was completely unplanned, because literally we said, what are we going to do today? And so I said, well, let's go to Switzerland. Why not? So we just got on the boat. We had a rattler, and then we had it all just, as we were heading back, and I said, let's go to the Zeppelin thing. Does anybody want to go to the Zeppelin? I said, yeah, let's go. That's when it all kind of, the aha moment came, that has subsequently been incorporated into other beer trips.
Yeah, it seems like a win. So for all the brewers and professionals that go on these trips, what are some of the things they say, when they finish a trip, or, a few months down the road where they had to be able to digest everything that happened? What's some of their feedback? Well,
the best feedback I get is actually from the places that we've been to and the brewers, that they've now enhanced. I brought them together. They're taking it from there. So this group, this Midwestern brewery, they've got a relationship now with actually a couple of specific hop growers. Now they're still getting their hops from their normal source and so on and so forth. But this whole thing now, they can personalize it. They have pictures of the hop grower with them, and they're saying, we're using his hops in our beer. So it really personalized that. And the hop grower loves it. He goes, hey, bring more people. That to me is the best thing, is that I'm not. My agenda is not to be a broker in the situation. It's really more of a facilitator to help both sides. The breweries that we go to in the United States, they're meeting other brewers, they're meeting other distributors, and they're having industry talk. They're not just giving the canned speech if it's the brew bus that shows up and 40 people get off. And to me, that's the best part, is that there's this beginning of longer relationships that are still active today. That's what I'm getting.
No, I love that. So, for anyone interested in planning their own trip to New Zealand, first off, please invite me. I would love to go. But for anyone who's interested in some sort of customized trip, or, just going on one of the ones you're already offering in 2024, how can they reach out to you? How can they learn more? Where do they start?
So there's two ways. One is it's real simple, www.tripsbeertrips.com, and then trip@tripsbeertrips.com. I got to always say the S's on there because I realize there's a lot of trips in that email. But that's pretty simple. And then online there is a details of every single. And so we're just giving you like the 40,000 foot level here. So there's a daily itinerary, and I'll tell you. And going back to what he said, I've had 3 or 4 guys tell me what they really liked about my trip was that it was planned, but there was flexibility. So we were having an experience that was just hitting it out of the ballpark. It wasn't like I'm saying, okay, guys, we got to go. There's enough flexibility built in that you can keep that vibe going without feeling, my wife and I always have this discussion about cruise ships. I always feel like the cruise ship, the place I love, they say you got to get back on the boat. And the place we're spending like 2 days, like, get me the hell out of here, So that, to me, I take that as a compliment, is that people say that there's really, it's planned, but it's not a Disneyland ride where you're on a track. There's flexibility. We can run to daylight. If we're having a good time, we're going to continue to have a good time. So again, one other little quick story, and this is unbeknownst to me, but we stay at this guest house in Woensach, which is the headquarters of the Hallertau hop growing region of Germany. And the innkeeper there, and I've been going there for years, she put on a special show for our group. I invited the Hop Growers Association higher ups, the president of the Hallertau Hop Growers Association. By the way, all these guys speak wonderful English, and we had our group there, and these people put on the innkeeper, her sister, and their families put on. Basically, it was like watching Sound of Musica when they had doing all the dancing and singing and things like that. Totally blew us all away. So it's these people are very, very engaging, and I think if you're nice to them and give them an opportunity, you can develop your own personal long-term relationship as well.
Awesome. Well, I hope to someday go on one of your trips, because I have the bug already. I love to travel. I'm always planning my next vacation. And when you can combine it with the level of professional development that you do and the intentionality and the people that you meet on your trips, geez,
Yep.
Trip, it sounds so impressive. Just not only the experts whose facilities we're visiting, but the people you're touring alongside. They're just like us in the industry. And I can only imagine how also valuable those conversations are.
Well, they are, and a couple things that I learned last year. I was involved with, going back to Weinstefan. We did a sensoric class. This is the very first class they'd ever taught in English. So it's basically we put together a custom course, 2 days in the classroom, 2 days out in the field, and I just forgot the where I was going with the whole thing with the sensoric thing. Oh, that the reason that these people were coming. There was a couple brewers. There was a couple of people that wanted to be. There were beer judges, and again, things I didn't think about is that they wanted to use that opportunity to basically give them some enhancement and some cred when they would be judging at the GABF for regional craft brew tastings and things like that. So we've got training from the sensoric class at Weinstefan that means something. So. I learned something as well as that. I just thought it was going to be like brewers trying to take this class, but it really other people are involved with that. Also, and to throw a little thing out here, education. First time this year, Weinstefan is offering a 15-week online course once a week, 2 hours. This is really for serious brewers and people in the brew house. This is not, you know. And then anyway, so it's 15 weeks. It culminates with a 1 week live brewing at Weinstefan. They have 3 pilot brews, a small, medium, large. You'll be brewing there, and then you celebrate your graduation with opening weekend at Oktoberfest. So they get it too. The Germans know how to have fun there too. So it's interesting. Again, if it's a little bit of a pitch, I apologize, but my trips are basically they're turnkey. But you're involved. It takes care of everything except for I always say except for airfare. So if you go to Germany with me, airfare and lederhosen are on you, but everything else is taken care of. And knock on wood, like I said, I've done over 75 of these trips now throughout the United States and Germany. Never had anybody act up. And that's the other reason why when you have people that are in the profession, you know that, they're also kind of on their own. We're having a great time, but nobody's acting up, if you get my drift.
Awesome. Well, it sounds amazing what you're doing, Trip. I truly hope to experience one of these days. Thanks for sharing so much about Trips Beer Trips. For anyone interested in learning more, go to Trips Beer Trips. That's with 2 S's on trips and trips.com. And I appreciate you being here. I'll see you in person real soon.
Andrew, thank you very much. Yep, and then for sure I'll see you at CBC. Like I said, I'm leaving in a couple of weeks for Germany, but yeah, I'll keep in touch.
Safe travels. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.